Well, here I am back again with another episode of the podcast of Still, joined with a special guest, and I'm very excited to get lost in this interview. Stephanie Williams, thank you so much for finding time to speak with me today about you in general.
Of course, I appreciate the invite. I wasn't sure when they would start regarding what we're going to talk about today, but I'm so happy that you reached out. Just know you beat a lot of folks out. So kudos to you for jumping on it right away. So I'm very appreciative of you just sharing your space with me, and I'm happy to be here.
And you're dressed wonderfully as well. You are
Yeah.
perfectly, got to represent, so it's fantastic. So yes, we're going to talk about a lot of things on this podcast today. We're going to talk about Strange and Unsung Heroes, which will be coming out on the 7th of November, which you've kindly sent me a copy over the internet to read, and I'm so excited for the world to get lost in this book. I'm surrounded by, as I can try and lift them all up without making an absolute mess. I love big encyclopedias when it comes to
Oh,
DC Comics, and I cannot wait for this physical copy to be on my shelves of Steel. Oh, okay. Now you've lost me.
yes.
It's there. It's physically
Yes.
there, and it's going to be a fantastic book. But we will talk about that soon. What I would love to know, first of all, is your origin story, as it were. Where did everything start for you, Stephanie?
Okay, so where do we begin? So we go all the way back to yesteryear or the 1900s, as my son likes to call it.
Ouch. Yeah,
Yeah,
that
right?
that hurts.
Deeply. As far as my relationship to comics, it came through playing Marvel versus Capcom at the laundromat. It was either that or playing Ninja Turtles in Time, and I was actually quite sick of dying in that underwater situation. So I would play that, and it was just storm, typhoon, typhoon, typhoon. I didn't actually read a comic until I went to here in America. They have like thrift stores. I'm pretty sure they're there in the UK as
We
well. So
do.
like secondhand stores. And I was there with my grandmother, and I found I think it was an Avengers 361 or 371. I bring that up because that was the moment that I realized that comics are kind of like, or Cape comics more so, are like soap operas that my grandmother loved. So, it's these daily shows that come on, and we're following these stories, and they're very dramatic. There are just things that are going on that are quite unbelievable, just like people running around in capes. And I just fell in love with this issue because it started with a threesome. Well, not like a real threesome, but there
Yes.
was a little situation, a little messy situation going on between Crystal, the Black Knight, and Cersei. And I was like, oh my God. And then Archie came, and then, Stephanie was reading comics along with all of romance comics and whatever YA I can get my hands on. And then life happened. I went off to college, and I always had a thing for creative writing, but I was told that, you can't really make money being a creative, right? Like that. So my parents said, and I was like, you know what? Sure. All right. Well, I do love science, so I'll focus on that. I thought I wanted to be a doctor. Then I found out I love people, but not enough for their lives to be in my hands in that way. So I fell in love with research, and everything from handling mice to snakes and everything else. It was quite of an experience. And once I graduated, went right into the work field, worked as an electron microscopist for 7 years. Mm, kind of happy, but not so much because I didn't necessarily feel fulfilled. And also, unfortunately, my work situation wasn't the best. It was only myself and usually the manager who was running the lab, and then one other person, one other scientist there. We never had more than three folks. And oftentimes we only had two, myself and the lab manager. So I hardly ever had any time off. So when I had my son, I was like, this can't be life. It just can't be this. So after I had him, I was dealing with some postpartum depression, and the nurse practitioner was like, well, there aren't many things that we can tell you that will help other than, medication, therapy, all these other things. But she's like, if I can make a suggestion to you in the interim, what are some things that you really enjoyed that centered you, or you were able to center yourself through it. And I was like, well, that was funny enough, reading comics and like really getting into the sci-fi movies that I love, like Alien and so forth. So that led to me going on Twitter, because I've heard that you can find community there. And right. So, I found other folks that were talking about comics. I even started blogging and kind of relating my new parenthood, motherhood type of journey through comics and, things like Terminator and again, Alien, because all of these movies centered around women who had children, but it just wasn't the sum of them. So that grew. Next thing I knew, I was doing a podcast called Misty Knight's Uninformed Afro. So Misty Knight, of course. I hate that this is so Marvel heavy. I promise I'm going to get to the DC stuff. So
It's fine. It's fine.
Yes. So um, we focused on Black superheroines in comics because we found that unless it was like a Storm, maybe Catwoman, if you're thinking of Halle Berry, people really weren't all that versed when it came to Black women characters in comics and just superheroes in general at the time. It was just back in like 2016. So that's where the research came in. So I would read all this stuff. I would piece together kind of like these timelines and these stories to let people know, like, hey, these women exist. Some of them have really impactful stories. You just got to hunt for them, but you don't have to anymore because I've done that for you. And myself and my podcast partner got invited to Washington, D.C. for the 2018 Art Summit. And I think that was the moment where it clicked and I was like, oh wait, this isn't just for funsy. Like people actually takes this seriously. Was interviewed by NPR. So that was another thing. So that podcast dissolved. I had all this research and I ended up pitching it to a website, Sci-Fi Wire, Sci-Fi Wire Fangirls to be specific. And it was the history of Dora Milaje from comics to movies, because Black Panther had just came out that year. And that was my first paid written piece. And the next thing I knew, in between experiments at work, I was like working on articles and getting into my whole entertainment journalist bag. And what a journey. I don't even know sometimes how I would work a full 9 to 5, had a toddler to deal with, raise, and also writing. So it wasn't until I finally decided to leave that job. My husband was like, hey, I fully support you. You've been doing, the extra full-time job on the side long enough and you're extremely talented. So let's see what happens if you're able to give 110%. So I was like, okay, great, because I also want to make comics now. So
let's
I
just
started
throw
doing
let's just throw even more onto the plate. It's fine.
let's just yes, and I know I'm kind of skipping around here, but um I started doing that and I drove Lyft for I don't know, like 6 months until the pandemic happened. But the reason why I drove Lyft was to have extra money so I can pay artists for like these one-page comics. They were just reminding me of Sunday Funnies. Again, it was affordable things. I would just tell these short stories because I completely forgot to tell you this. I guess my popularity on the internet was through memeing. So through memes, I would tell stories using still shots from Justice League Unlimited, X-Men the animated series, Spider-Man, all of these. And I don't know, I think I kind of self-taught myself how to write comics in a way where instead of coming up with a panel, I was using what was already given to me to tell a fashion story around. So it was nice to finally be able to write out panels and say, hey, I like this thing to happen. This is the story I want to tell. So it was like a backwards way of doing things, but it still honed that skill altogether. So anyway, back to the lifting. I was doing that to pay for comics. I had a Kickstarter that I did with artist Aaron O'Neill Jones, Living Heroes. If you all are familiar, it is a mashup of the sitcom Living Single meets Marvel. And that did exceptionally well, surprisingly. And then the next thing I knew, instead of what I feared would happen was Marvel saying, hey, you shouldn't be doing that. An editor reached out to me to do Marvel Voices Legacy. And then the week that came out in 2021, is when Nubia happened. And here we are. And that is
Yes.
like that is like skipping so much, but here we are. So it has been a journey. It's one that is still going. When I got the opportunity for Strange and Unsung Heroes or All Stars, that also came out of the blue as well. A friend of mine had been offered the project, but he felt that I would be a better fit because he remembered all of the character pieces that I would do. And I was like, you know what? Yes. And it just so happened that the editor, Randall, was a huge fan of my work on Nubia and also enjoyed my writing from, previous stuff. So it was just a match made in heaven. Now, where things got tricky was the timeline to get all this done. And also, how do you discern who's strange and
Mm.
who's unsung? And as you probably know, there are a lot of characters for DC Comics. There are I mean, I felt like I was like dreaming DC characters at one point during the summer for a month straight because I was also working on Nubia, the second series at the same time. So I thought I was going to have to put on a tinfoil hat.
I
It
mean,
got
yeah,
really
'cause
intense.
I mean, without spoiling too much, we will go into some of the characters that you do feature in this book. But yes, there are some there that are just complete fever dreams that once you start diving into that world more and thinking about them non-stop, because as you know, you love your research, all this information is in your head. You're bringing that with you wherever you go. So well done
Yeah,
for getting this book out and coming out the other end, because these
yeah.
characters are just it's sensational.
Thank you. Now, did I come out unscathed? Time will tell. Probably not.
We'll come back in a
If
year's time. We'll see what happens.
yes. But if anything, I just had a greater appreciation for just comics in general, but also DC Comics because of just especially the cosmic side, how
Mm,
vast but detailed everything is. The fact that so much work went into creating these entire planets and giving them a whole way of life so that these characters that come from these planets, when they go off to try to join the legion of superheroes or whatever, they bring something, and that is just something that I have just been so enamored with because I don't know, just the thought of it all. Even I covered some of Jack Kirby's characters, which is like, of course you would, but
yeah.
also why would you? Because Jack Kirby had such big brain ideas. I think at one point, because Black Racer is on the cover, I almost broke my brain trying to write that. Because how do you? Because that was the trouble. Like, how do I explain this character in a way that fully is a full realization of what Jack Kirby did with him? And yeah, that took about a week just to figure that out just for him. So yeah. I my appreciation for Jack Kirby also just went through the roof. Just covering some of his characters because I mean, wow,
Mm.
what a mind.
And it is that. I mean, but by as you said, by having this greater respect for all these characters that have been there for decades, not just
Mm-hmm.
overnight strange heroes, you've managed to create this fun read that is also so informative, but not just look at this weird character. He's weird for these reasons. It's like, let's get into this character. Let's peel back those layers. Let's find out why these wonderful, wonderful creations mean so much to the world of comics, both past, present, and future when it comes to comics these days. So I'm looking forward to when this finally does get released in a few weeks' time and the world gets lost in it and people remember these characters that they maybe have forgot about, maybe wanted to forget about in some cases, but
Yeah.
also just remember how far comics have come and such how it can be such an exciting medium for me. So, how did it though begin for you? Where did you sort of research this? This is what I want to know. And how did you deep dive into these characters' backstories?
So first we had to just come up with a list. So there were about 20 or so characters I knew off the top of my head. I was like, okay, well, I don't know if too many people know about them, but I'm like, let me include them on this list. My editor Randall had some picks himself. And then also a friend of mine had like a little list themselves. I was like, you know what? Yeah, like let me use my resources. What are some strange folks? Who do you think would possibly be best for this? So combining all of that, and then of course, DC themselves had characters that they either wanted included or they didn't. So once we had this list comprised, I think it was like 120 or more
Mm.
or something crazy like that. Randall sent me like this hard drive that had all of DC comics up until 2012 on
Ooh,
there. Yeah, I still have
wow.
that. I don't know if I was supposed to return it, but he's never
We'll
getting that
forget
back.
about that. I'll cut that part out.
But and he sent that, and then of course, I had the DC Universe Infinite app at my disposal, and then also some stuff that I had before from other research, other ways to get some comics or whatever. So once I had all of that, it was just like, okay, so then where do we begin with these
Mm.
characters? So like the research nut that I am, I would look for other articles and stuff that might have been written about these characters, or at least reading lists, so I can know where to begin for some of them that I just knew nothing about. Because where do you pop up? For a lot of them, they don't have their own series. They just kind of randomly pop up in someone else's series. And very similar to the work that I did with Misty Knight's Afro, it was just like, okay, well, how do you piece together someone's story, someone's history, where you have bite-sized bits of them spanning, decades of
Yeah.
books? So I got to reading and reading and reading, reading and reading and reading. Because here's the thing, different websites that do summarizations of characters are nice, right? They'll give you an idea of where to start, but you miss out on key nuggets that you just can't get without reading.
Yeah.
um Little throwaway lines or something that someone might have missed, like you have to do the work, you have to read. And as daunting as that was, I'm so happy that I did, because for some of the characters that I thought I knew a lot about, I was like, actually no, I
Yeah.
missed a whole thing about them. Like, wow. I don't know if I want to name it, like Rexstar for or Dexstar, for instance, right? I thought I knew everything about this cat. And when I got the proof for the cover, I was like, wait, did I write about him? Is he even in this book? And then I thought, I was like, oh wait, you did. You spent a whole 3
Yep.
days steeped in all of this. So yeah, that's how much I was in the trenches for this book, that I think some stuff I just blocked out, and I was like, I don't remember. But yeah, you did write about him. But there were things about his character that I found, and I was like, oh wait, I completely get why people really love this character, and me too, because of these little moments. Same thing with Peacemaker.
Mm.
um just his journey to even get to DC Comics, and all the Infinite Crises. Oh my God, so many of them. But the very big one that happened, and how smart that was, how intricate it was to kind of bring these characters that DC had acquired from other comic book publishers and to birth them into the DC universe. I was absolutely fascinated with. And Peacemaker didn't really lose too much of what he was prior to DC acquiring him from another company, which I also thought was pretty fascinating too, because sometimes that happens and then a character gets a whole new revamp. And in the case of him, that wasn't the case.
No.
King Shark is another one
Yes.
where doing the research on him was a little eye-opening too, because I was like, man, he ate his mom's arm. What is this? All things I kind of forgot about, but it was just really cool. My uncle,
Oh,
just
yeah.
the Legion of Substitutes
Mm-hmm.
was really cool. Some characters that I randomly remember from episodes of Batman the animated series. So the whole Helix group, and yeah, Baby Boom, and all these characters. And when I would research, I'm like, again, just a wealth of just, I don't like, how can you not find a character that you can't just vibe with, is what I'm getting at. There is someone for everyone.
Oh, literally, yeah. There is, I think what there was a few names here that I yes have heard of, didn't know too much about, but this is why I love books like this, because you get to dive into that world, and then from that you want to go and read more about this character and find out
Mhm.
how this villain came to be, what happened to this gang of individuals, and then you've got characters like Beard Hunter. I was like, what? I was like, I've never heard of this character before. I need to know more about this. And it's just things like that where it's just you start getting the red string and just pinning everybody together and thinking, what would it be like if this character interacted with this bizarre creation? And it's a wonderful world to get lost into. And I can see now your love for research has made this book happen. So
Yeah.
well done for being a research nerd, as you said, because it's paid off.
Thank you. And I will thank the the bachelor's degree that is like sitting in my closet still in the UPS packaging.
Get that in a
But
frame.
yeah, I will frame it one day, yes. But it's just really funny to me how, because people often ask me like, what do you see in the connection from your previous career to your new one? And a lot of stuff that I did in science, I am able to apply to what I do now. And it goes beyond the research aspect of it, even down to writing this book or just writing a comic. Though to me, I'm very methodical when it comes to that. So I have like a set structure, the same way that I would have with an experiment. And then sometimes I find when I'm fine tuning things because it didn't quite work out the way that I wanted to, or wasn't as efficient as it could be, then I'm kind of fine tuning my whole creative process. But then, through science, I learned that just because an experiment doesn't turn out the way that you thought that it would, that's okay, because now you have an answer or you have more questions, right, for something else. And it's the same thing when I am writing or even working on a book like this. I'm always asking, okay, well, what would happen if X did this? Or how would that look? And then going forth and experimenting through writing to figure out what that looks like, and not really knowing what the outcome will be sometimes, but sometimes knowing what the outcome will be, and like how do we get to this point. So it's been very fascinating just to me personally, just kind of see those connection on two things where they don't really seem to be connected because one is more analytical than the other.
Mm.
But no, I've been able to find common ground between the two. So I will not say that, all the time I spent in college or just in school in general was a waste, because I definitely am still using it.
And it's working well, because I can't stop smiling when I'm thinking about this book, and the fact that you've got a copy there as well. I would love to know how you felt when you had that in your hands for the first time.
A sigh of relief, because so at the time, when I found out that Randall was going to try to get James Gunn for the Ford, I'm like, well, yes, absolutely, because it makes sense. Because the first name for this book was not this. It was like Heck Yeah, Peacemaker, in a like 10 other words afterwards. I don't
Yeah.
remember, but it was like really long. And I'm like, yeah, this makes sense because thanks to his work with Suicide Squad and also Peacemaker, people are more interested in these weird characters that they weren't before. This was before he took over for that we knew that he was going to be doing anything with DC related on a higher scale. So when that happened, I was like, oh, well, this
Mm.
is great. So I was just nervous because sometimes with these books, like you'll do them and then they never see the light of day. I've had friends who have done these type of encyclopedia books, and then I'll get I'll get a reader copy, and then we never see them. So that was my fear, that would happen. That didn't happen. So when I finally got it, it was a sigh of relief for that, because so much work went into it. And I just really wanted it to be out in the world, because I put so much into this. Randall put so much into this, and it was something that was done. It was a labor of love. It truly was. So to hold it in my hand was just like, finally, my my DC fever dream now exists, and it is now in my hands. And this is just lovely. So like flipping through it, and of course, you're always stressed because you're like, okay, well, did we miss anything? Or Are people going to be like, hey, you didn't include so and so? And of course, it's going to happen. But there's
Yeah.
only so many characters that you can fit in one book. We really tried our damnedest to make sure that we pick characters with intention. And I'm just happy that it's here.
I've been asking friends, what characters do you want to see in this book, to sort of try and get an idea of if they're going to be right or wrong, or if they're going to be
Yeah.
surprised. And a lot of the names that the people have said, I've seen a few of them pop up, which I'm happy about. But it's when someone says, "Oh, I don't think they're going to put this character in," and then, "Oh, well, you're going to have to wait and see." But I know there's going to be a lot of people out there that are very happy when this book arrives on their mats, and I'm ready to talk more about it in the upcoming weeks. And it will be hard for me to stop talking about this book, because as I said, I love encyclopedias. Anything that we can get information that is accurate, for one thing. A lot of people say, "Oh, why don't you just go to Wikipedia for your information?" It's like, well, that's not the best of ideas, really. You want facts. You want honest, true facts, not opinions. And this is what this book gives, in a funny, entertaining way. But as you said, at the same time, respecting that history and embracing the future of comics by bringing it all together in one delightful book. So I'm excited for this to get released. And talking back about James Gunn, things have changed over those months before this book was created. And then you had that moment which brought us together, because I've found out about the book and got very excited. And then he shared it out. He tweeted out the book, and your excitement then was probably going to be quite large.
Yeah, because had no idea.
Yeah.
Editor didn't even know until actually the tweet went up.
Yeah.
So I think, and it's funny because I was actually doing another podcast. And I just got out of it. And I was like looking at my notifications. I was like, I didn't post anything today yet. So like what's going on? So originally when I saw your comment with me attached to it, I didn't open it. I was just like, I thought you had possibly gotten, like, I was like, oh, they've already sent out like, advanced copies for folks to read. That's great. All of that. And then I went, so like my original reply was like, oh my God, I'm just so happy that somebody has it in their hands, not knowing that that person was actually done. So then I
Yeah.
went back and I actually opened it. I was like, oh.
Mhm.
So then yeah, my assignment did go through the roof because again, like I wasn't expecting that, and I already knew what had happened when he had done that before with talking about Wonder Woman Historia and Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow, and like how that just opened those books up to a whole sector of people that either didn't know that those books existed or just had not read them. So I was very excited, but then also like very quickly nervous because I was like, oh crap.
It's real. This is happening.
It's real. It's real. It's happening. And I'm like, oh wait, this book isn't gonna just fly under the radar anymore. Not that I thought it would, but I was like, it definitely isn't now. So I was just that day, I think I might have had like maybe a deadline or two. Those definitely got
Nope.
missed. And I was like, yeah, I told my editor, and they actually saw the news too. And they were like, yeah, we know. We'll see you tomorrow. It's like, thank you. I really appreciate that. And I checked Amazon and all I saw was number one, number one, number one on like three different categories, which was really cool. So I'm just really extremely thankful. Again, like this book was like my summer project. It felt like a school type situation in a fun way. So again, to just know that this is going to be out there to folks who maybe would have never even checked for it if he hadn't tweeted it out.
Hmm.
It just makes me really excited.
This is why I just knew you were going to be a fantastic guest today, and just the perfect person to write this book. So before I forget to thank you for this book, thank you for this book,
Well, I
because
appreciate you. Thank you.
it's, again, I say, it's going to be on my shelves of steel with all my other encyclopedias. When you get into those heated debates sometimes with friends, you say, well, let me go to my comics, let me go to my books, let me find out if you are wrong about that detail. I will be running to this book and saying, look, this is why you're wrong, and this book is right because Stephanie said so.
Well, the other thing too, like the way that I've always treated these character pieces that I would do on characters was I kind of treated them like real people. Like if I was profiling a real person, that's kind of the energy that I brought to that. And the same thing goes for this book. Because there are a lot of characters who have very delicate histories. So how do you talk about that in a way that is still uh, kind of showing respect to the time that they were created in? That's one of the things that I really love about comics, is that they are just a very beautiful snapshot to me of the time period of whenever the issue or the character was created. Some of them problematic, absolutely.
Oh,
But
goodness me, yes.
yeah, absolutely. But even with that being said, I don't think that is something that should be shied away from, because if we forget that that ever existed or the reason why it did, then there's a good chance that there'll be a repeating of that. So I think it's very important to explore that. There are a couple characters where they were introduced through a very tricky time, the HIV and AIDS epidemic, and one of the characters, Jet, I really wanted her in this book because I felt like at the time, through all of the stories that she was involved in, I felt like to retrospectively look at it, sure, you can say, you got this wrong, you got that wrong. But you got to remember that when these comics were being written, it was in the thick of it, right?
Yeah.
It's very it's really easy to have hubris like on the other side of something. Or just a better idea of how things should be handled after the fact. So with that being said, like, no, I thought that it was handled as best as it could be. And because of that, I didn't have a negative take on that character. If anything, I just had an appreciation again for her existence, the topics that were very delicate to address, especially for a big publisher like a DC Comics, to even bother to address. I also found that, funny enough, a lot of comics that were older were extremely progressive. I know sometimes, like, I'll bring up to folks like, no, I do enjoy reading older comics. I'm like, why? Because, like, you're a Black woman. Why on earth would you, what would you want to put yourself through that torment? Like, well, no, because it's not all bad. It's not. In fact, some of them are extremely progressive. Sometimes even more so than today, as far as like just the freedom of expression and everything else. So there are characters like Jed, who have tricky histories, but I don't come at that angle. I want the reader to just see the beauty in what was created at the time, and how we can, it wasn't so bad and we can do better today. We can build on that. That's the way I feel about most things. I mean, hey, that was my attitude when it came to writing Nubia. Was, yeah, when she was introduced, was a little shaky, sure, but there are things that, foundational pieces that can be taken from that to bring this character to 2022, 2023, and not just poo poo what was done before, because it takes a lot to create a character. It takes a lot to create, period. Um, to be brave enough to put something out there, even as silly as it might seem, but someone has to do it. And the fact that, these creators came together to create these characters, either to like, lead a book or be someone's Batman's new villain of the week, or to kind of be this throwaway thing. There's an appreciation that I have for these characters, and their creators, and just the fact that they're here, because they don't have to be, but they are.
That's what, and again, sort of looking at the back of the book with all the thanks that you give to the creators over the years. Again, I'm not going to reveal those names because there are spoilers in that.
Yeah.
But it's a book that is just filled though with comic magic, but you've got that history element as well, and that the facts, as I said, keep going back to that. It's got facts in it, but it's just enjoyable to read and impossible to put down. See, I'm not going to try and reveal too much, but I've got my copy on my iPad, and I just can't wait to hold this in my hands, because the artwork inside it, that leaps off the pages in itself. And
Yeah.
it's got everything again from the early days to the modern stuff. And it is, again, a visual encyclopedia is the perfect way to put this. And there are more characters out there that, as you said, didn't make it into the book. I'm hoping for more from you
I
especially
hope so.
because I know there's probably a few characters in that wonderful head of yours that are still living in there rent free
Yes.
and need to come out onto paper. They need to come out.
Absolutely. It's so funny. So after you turn something in, it's always that thing of, oh crap, I forgot about this, this, and this. So there are a good amount of characters that after the fact, I was like, oh, damn it, I forgot all about them. Because again, it's just so funny when someone finally tells you to put together a list and you do your best to do it. Then you do the thing, and then it's just like, oh, I completely forgot about so and so who I was obsessed with when I was 11.
Yeah.
How did I forget about them? But if anything, if this book is highly successful, then there's always room for a sequel, another chance to include everyone. And then when that's out, remember, oh, wait, I also forgot about so and so. So that will always just be a thing. But if anything, my hope though is that when people read this, then they go out and they go on their own adventures and try to discover some of these characters that maybe they kind of ignored, and they're like, wait, well, my uncle was in the book with this person. They're pretty cool. Let me research them, because that is the fun thing about comics. I know there are so many, it can be daunting, but for me, like I don't know, like it's a happy adventure waiting to happen. You read one book and then all of a sudden you want to read the one that comes after or the one before. You fall in love with the character, and next thing you know, you want to read everything that this character has ever been into. And then you run into another character on that journey, and then you kind of like this beautiful branch or this tree begins to get made of all these characters that you've discovered because of one. And that is just one of the beautiful things of comics. You can start wherever you want to start, especially with Batman. There's like
Mm.
80 billion versions, like 80 billion runs of Batman, Superman, even Wonder Woman. In fact, in that hard drive I received when I was going through, and it was like Batman, Superman, The Flash, uh, all the Green Lanterns, Wonder Woman, like those folders were the thickest. Aquaman as well.
Oh, oh, it's just like I can see that being in a museum somewhere someday. Just all these comics stored away nice and safely. But it's one of
Yeah.
those things for me. Is one of my many things on my bucket list is to go to those DC libraries and see the original comics one day and just sort of
Yeah.
be allowed. I know a few friends that have gone, and I mean, trying not to be jealous when they talk about it, but just to be in the room with Action Comics #1, or to be there with some of the most it's the biggest comics ever printed. Is Comics are special to me, and they clearly are to you. And
Yeah.
I love hearing, as I said, passionate people talk about what makes them tick. And I'm ready for more stories from you in the future, which is segues into the
Yeah.
next thing that we can talk about. Maybe not too much, but this came out, well, the news this week about the Batman and Superman annual, which made me very excited.
Yeah.
Yeah, how did that happen?
So that was Stephanie talking her editor's ear off about all the things that she loves. Brittany Holzer is was my editor on the Nubia comics and a few other things that I've done. And I was like, yeah, I love Bumblebee. Like, you know that I love Bumblebee, right? And she's like, yes, Stephanie, I know that you love Bumblebee. So we kind of had a conversation, and it was just a regular conversation. Wasn't necessarily pitching anything, just talking about Bumblebee and how much I enjoy her and everything. So I was at Galaxy Con over the summer in Raleigh, and minding my own business at my table, and I hear someone say, "Hey, Stephanie, it's Mark Wade," and I look up. And my brain kind of fizzled a little bit, because I think this is like Sunday, so it's a 4-day con, so by then
Mm.
your brain is just sizzled. And it took a moment to register. I was like, Mark, oh my God, Kingdom Come, Mark Wade. I know who you
That Mark
are. Yeah,
Wade.
I absolutely know who you are. I'm actually reading what you're doing right now with the Teen Titans World Finest. So he came and he introduced himself, which was really cool. And I was just telling him how much impact his work had on me, just as a reader, but definitely now that I am a creator myself, and just giving him his flowers, because Mark Waid has read some stories that have had got me through some dark times. So whenever I see a creator that has had that type of impact on my life, I always make it a point to say that to him. In fact, I was going to go to Mark Waid's table. He just beat me to it and came to mine. So that was really cool. And we were just kind of talking and everything. So I get an email from an editor. And Brittany was like, yeah, like, I'm so happy you got a chance to meet Mark Waid. Like, we adores you and everything. So she was like, hey, so like this annual, you want to write a story in that? And I was like, yeah, I absolutely do. So that's how the Bumblebee kind of thing kind of came to be. Perfect timing. And again, just Stephanie talking someone's ear off about stuff that she enjoys and it just kind of coming back full circle. So I can't get into the nitty gritty of what the story is
that's
about, but it
that's
does focus
fine.
on Bumblebee. And I think you all are going to enjoy it. Again, like Karen is just one of those characters who I covered in Misty Knight's Uninformed Afro. I've written about separately. I've just always been intrigued with her because she's also a woman of science. I always seem to gravitate towards those characters. So there's a kinship there. So I'm very happy to like be a part of this. And again, like what Mark has done with the Teen Titans and kind of the reimagining of them a little bit in the world's finest has just been nothing short of stellar. So I am very honored to, be part of this in a way and, add a little something extra for Bumblebee and see what happens from there.
It's going to be exciting couple of years for you. I'm hoping
Yeah.
you're going to be busy.
Oh,
I hope,
yes.
yes, but busy is good. Busy is good, but I'm excited to see what your mind produces because it's
Thank
been
you.
exciting so far. And as you said, when you pick up a book and you find out about new characters and new creators, you want to find out not only more about the characters but the creators. You want to find out their origin story, as I said, and you want to know how their way of storytelling has changed over the years, whether it be the art styles or the storytelling. So that's the great thing, say, about this history of comics, is that there's so much out there that hasn't been read yet, and the stuff
Yes.
in the future that is yet to be written. It's a wonderful world to get lost in.
It really is. And it's just something very beautiful that I ran into an editor at NYCC, Glenn Greenberg. He was an editor at Marvel, and he came to my table to introduce himself. We were talking, and he was like, "Well, yeah, like I wrote Rampaging Hulk," and I was like, "I know that you did," and that took him by surprise. He was like, "I didn't think anybody read that." I was like, "But Glenn, someone did, and that
Mm.
someone was me." And I read it because I was researching, this silly article that I was writing about the best butts in Marvel. That was the piece.
Okay,
And
first
I
of
just
all,
wanted.
who was
I
number one? Who was number one?
don't even remember. Who was
See?
number one? It might have been It might have been Nightcrawler, but I
Okay.
could be wrong. I have
Okay.
to check. Or it might have been Venom. One of the two. It was someone or Spider Man.
Well,
One of the three.
it's
Yes.
the journey, isn't it? It's the journey we
It's
go through
the
to get to the destination, so it's fine.
So, but anyway, I ended up reading Rampaging Hulk because I was looking for, shots of Hulk's butt and like comics or whatever. And that's how I came across Rampaging Hulk. And he was appreciative. He thought it was funny and just really enjoyed it. But I was like, yeah, like, no, I read that, or at least your run of it. And I mean, I'm not, BSing you, but I did enjoy it. And he loved to hear that because there are just so many stories that have been written and folks maybe have no idea if someone has read it, but that's the beautiful thing. Like there is a story, there's a comic run, there's a whatever for someone out there, and just specifically for them. And for me at that time, it was Rampaging Hulk. So that was really nice to kind of share that random moment with this editor. But yeah, I'm hoping that the work that I've done so far, it finds who it needs to find and it inspires them to either read more comics or to create comics on their own because it's just such a beautiful medium. If I can talk as many people as I can into either reading or creating themselves, I will. Just ask my son.
Yeah, yes, we can get to that, because he was recently at a con with you. He was showing off his artwork as well. You were sharing a booth as such, weren't you? Tell me a bit more about that.
Yeah, so he's always been drawing, telling stories himself. I think it didn't really dawn on him what I did for a living because he was so used to mommy like working in a lab and everything. And then all of a sudden it was home all the time. He was like, what are you doing here? So, I would be writing and everything. And then he was like, oh, like you write these stories that I'm like, because DC will send you a big box of comps. And I was opening one. And he was like, oh, wait, you wrote that? I'm like, yes, I did. And someone else drew it, but yes, mommy wrote it, and then it he put two and two together. So the drawing, the storytelling just went into overdrive, and it's been beautiful to watch because not only has it helped make him a stronger reader, as he has been, getting better at that, but I've noticed that he has a knack for storytelling, and it's actually quite beautiful, really, how innate it has been for him. Because again, like we didn't really talk about that in that way, at least not at the time. Now
Mm.
we do, but it was just something that was just in him. So he comes to the cons with me, and he'll sit next to me at the table to keep me company, but also to work on his own art, to sell his art. He started making comics. He did a comic called it featured Kirby, the game
Yeah.
character, and it was called Kirby's Little Friends, which was just like really cute. And it's just this journey of Kirby, traveling through the land and just collecting his friends, and or just visiting people and saying hello and then going on. So yeah, now his gripe is that there are no Mario comics. He doesn't understand why there's Mario manga, but he just doesn't understand why there isn't any Mario comics. So he said that when he gets older, that he will make sure that there are Mario comics available for folks to read. Same thing with Kirby. Sonic, he was very happy to find out that there are Sonic comics. And I was like, yes, there absolutely are. And maybe one day you could write them.
Oh, see, going to follow in your footsteps, and I'm ready to see that. If not, you
Yeah.
can join forces and create your own writing team. There's so much potential there for more. So, as you said earlier on, you can start paying that rent, as you said.
Yeah. Or at least, if it's not rent, just something on the groceries, because little boys eat a lot. I should know this because I have five brothers, but I don't know if I forgot or whatever. But I mean, just eating, eating, eating. I don't know where it goes. I told him he has a little black hole in his stomach, and that's his running joke now. When I say you want something else, he's like, yes, because I have a black hole in my stomach, and I'm like, oh well, that's my words coming back to haunt me.
Yeah, there's going to be another character there in the future as well, possibly for the next book. You
Yeah,
had the book as well recently at New York Comic Con.
yeah.
What was the reactions like for that from the public?
So that was really cool because I actually forgot the book. It was sitting at home on my desk. My husband texted me and was like, "Hey, I think you forgot something," and it was the book. And I was like, "Crap." So I think it was Saturday. I went upstairs. The show floor had opened. I got there very early, so I was like, "Let me try to walk around before everyone gets here. Before I got to go to my table." So I walk over to Hatchet Book Group. Well, actually, no. I see the banner for the book up, and I was like, oh, wait, I didn't know this was gonna like they had any of this up. So I walk over, and the woman behind the counter is like, oh, do you want to like scan your badge? Because we have gifts and stuff that we're giving away. And I was like, well, yes, but also that's my book back there.
That's
And
my
she was like,
book.
oh, wait, you're Stephanie Williams. Like, yes. So it was a really fun, cool moment. I told her that I forgot my copy, and she's like, oh, don't worry, I got you. And she like takes the book out, and she's like, you can keep this, you don't have to bring it back, I have an extra. And she's like, man, I really wish we had this for sale now because people have been asking about it, or if they can purchase it. And it was the same thing when I went down to my table and I had it up like just as a display. And folks were like, well, can I buy that now? Like, do you have more? I'm like, no, I'm so sorry. You can. I will direct you to the pre-order link available through like my website or the link tree, but no, unfortunately you can't. So folks were able to like thumb through it, and I saw a lot of eyebrows shoot up because they were like, oh wait, this character is in it. I wasn't expecting that. So that was just, it was just really cool. And I'm just happy to know that people are really excited because, like you said, like encyclopedias are cool.
Mm.
And I feel like, people don't really appreciate them like that anymore, like they used to, because you could just, go to a Wikipedia or go to a fandom.com or whatever. And those things have their place, but there's just something very magical about holding something like that in your hand and just reading about these characters and just kind of getting these beautiful snapshots of, who they are and what their history is
That's
with a
it.
little comedy.
With a little comedy, but
Yeah.
with some hard hitting facts as well. But that's what I love about that. That's what I love. I've got a few more questions for you. You've
Yeah.
been a perfect guest today, and I'm hoping that this won't be the last time that you are on the show, because I want to
Oh,
speak to you
no.
more in the future. Because as I said, I love hearing the passion in people's voices. It's something that I've noticed over the years, is that when you speak with someone about something that gives them joy, there's a light that comes on inside them, and it's addictive. And I love talking about what makes me happy, but also learning more about what other passions people have that the world might not know about. So thank you for being so passionate today
Yeah.
and about this book and the future. I know you're going to be busy over the next few months, but it's the 7th of November this book comes out. There will be links to this to the pre-sale when this podcast goes live very soon. And there will, I've, because I love this book and I love it so much, I'm going to be starting a giveaway for that pretty soon, because
Yeah.
no one's having my copy. It's mine. That's the main thing for it. But where do you see yourself in 5 years' time, Stephanie? What's going to be next for you?
Well, where I hope I am is in a writer's room for a DC animated project. So I will always write comics. That will be something that I will always do. But I just really love animated shows. Again, like for me personally, DC animated shows were what really, I don't know, informed me about the world. And they've just always been so good.
Mhm.
Justice League and Justice League
Oh,
Unlimited. Dwayne McDuffie is like one of my favorite writers. And that's because a lot of his stories were just written with so much heart. No matter what was going on, you just felt the way that he wrote those characters, like you felt the humanity in them, and it was just done in such a beautiful way. So for me, 5 years from now, I would hope that I am in a writer's room, but to be very hyper specific for I don't know, like a writer's room DC related for a Wonder Woman thing, maybe even Nubia, who knows.
oh,
But
who knows?
I would love that. Yeah, like even if I didn't have an 8-year-old, I would still be watching animated shows because similar to comics, I am just obsessed with the limitless possibilities that you can have with animation.
Yes.
And just the worlds that you create and explore. And then just talking really more so to kids programming, just the intent and just how clear and concise those stories can be, but also not in a way that is talking down to kids. They're very much a part of the conversation. And I just love that. I really do. There's some stuff that I'll sit down and I'll watch with my son. I'm like, yeah, it's like really, really good. It's like when you go to bed, I'm probably still going to be watching this.
That happened a few years ago. Both my nieces were heavily into Gravity Falls,
Oh,
and
yeah.
I was like, "What's this show you're watching?" And I was like, "I think I watched one episode, and then I just lost the whole day." And I was like, "This is incredible. This is amazing." And I can't agree more. The fact it's something that DC does with their animation over the years. Yes, sometimes there are issues with the world of movies. They're difficult to get right, but the animation, when it comes to the music, when it comes to the writing, when it comes to the voice actors, there's something there that DC just locks onto, and it is magic. Now, I've got the Justice League episodes on VHS and DVD. I found out yesterday that tomorrow in the UK, Netflix is going to be starting the Justice League series on their streaming service. I was like, this is amazing. I know
Yeah.
all these episodes back to back, but they're going to be there when I'm like out. commuting somewhere, I'm going to have those episodes in my hand. And yeah, there is a magic. And if the world of animation is lucky enough to have you in the next 5 years, I am so excited for that.
Thank you.
Before I wrap up, I will quote you on your website, that this quote, which is perfectly one of many quotes, but I love this one. My journey the last 5 years has been unquantifiable. I know how I got here, and it's only the beginning. I love that.
Thank you.
That is a
And I will say that
fantastic quote.
I appreciate it. I will say that 2 years after that, same thing. Because Luke, I I'm just very, very grateful. So much has happened since the pandemic, and just for me, career-wise, it's been night and day. I thought that I was going to be, working in this lab until retirement, and just getting by, kind of content. But now my life has changed completely. And I will have to say that DC Comics is definitely a part of that. My big break came through Nubia. And just everything that this has just opened up. And to be able to do a book like Strange and Unsung All-Stars is it's just really beautiful. I just never thought I would be able to, like, instead of just articles, do a whole book. That just I hope the passion shines through to people about how I feel about comics, these characters, and all of that. So yeah, it's still unquantifiable, but I do know how I got here, and it is still weirdly just the beginning. So I'm excited to see what happens. I'm excited to talk to you about more stuff, because who knows? Who knows what email I might get this week? And I'm just like, oh crap. All right. Well, that is happening. Maybe it's news like, hey, come join the writer's room for XYZ. So we'll see.
I'm excited for it. Right, before we leave you with all your socials and where people can find you, I'm going to ask you a question that I love asking people, because I get a different response each and every time. But what does Superman mean to you, Stephanie?
Superman needs hope to me. He has always signaled that. Most times we're like, it should be Diana, but no, it's Superman. To come to this planet and grow up through the care of the kids, and still decide to, once he gets his powers, still decide to do what he feels is right when he absolutely does not have to. He isn't even of this world. To me, that is very powerful, and that is something that he will always be a character that is one of my favorites because of that, because of all that he represents. But it's hope, dare to hope, and that is Superman all the way down.
Perfect. Every answer I get is always so beautifully put, but everyone means so much to me. So thank you for that. Thank you for your time today. Thank you for this book that comes out on the 7th of November. And I'm going to be ready for that Batman Superman annual next year as well. Stephanie, where can people find you and adore you online?
Let's see. So on all of the apps, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, the app formerly known as Twitter, you can find me at Steph_I_Will. That is STEPH_I_WILL. As you can tell, I was just creating social handles, having no idea that they would be actually, important to business, but here we are. You never know.
I will link them all here when this podcast goes live. I cannot wait. Stephanie, one more time, thank you so much for joining me today to talk about what makes you so passionate. And I'm really grateful for this book and for your time today. And I know we'll be speaking again in the future.
Absolutely. Thank you, Luke.
It's my pleasure.